picture this highly specific, incredibly relatable scenario in your mind right now? Because I can absolutely guarantee without a single shadow of a doubt that this exact exhausting sequence of events has happened directly to you at least once within the last month. It is exactly 5:30 in the evening on a typical Friday. You have just finally exhaustingly crossed the finish line of a grueling, demanding 45-hour work week. You are physically present, sitting there perfectly still inside your car or riding quietly on the evening train, but mentally, your exhausted brain is completely and utterly fried to an absolute crisp. You are slowly making your daily drive home, and the mere thought of actually standing in your kitchen and cooking a healthy meal currently seems about as physically appealing and energetically possible as strapping on winter gear and actively climbing to the summit of Mount Everest. So in quiet defeat, you pull up your favorite food delivery application on your phone. You impulsively decide to order some comforting Thai food, or perhaps a hot pizza, or maybe some heavy burgers. By the time you seamlessly add in the delivery driver's tip and all those hidden platform fees, that single convenience meal ends up costing you a staggering $45. Then you finally get back home. You instantly crack open a cold beer, or you quickly pour yourself a heavy glass of poor quality wine simply to take that sharp, stressful edge right off your nerves. And you heavily sink deep into the cushions of your couch to mindlessly binge-watch a random television show that you do not even really like, doing it solely just to completely turn your overworked brain off for the night. You quietly tell yourself, deeply rationalizing the entire situation, "I absolutely earned this specific moment. I have worked incredibly hard all week long." But what if I looked you dead in the eye and explicitly told you that, strictly mathematically speaking, you absolutely did not just spend a simple $45 tonight? What if I directly told you that the expensive pizza delivery, the costly gas that you burned driving all the way home, the nice shirt you wore to the corporate office, and the immense, crushing stress that originally forced you to desperately order that convenient food in the very first place, are all actually hidden, invisible taxes that are secretly reducing your total salary by nearly 70%? You likely believe in your heart that you were successfully selling your precious time for a respectable $30 every single hour, but after we perform a deep, forensic accounting on the actual reality of your daily life, the cold, hard math proves that you might actually be working for much less than $4 an hour. My name is Kyle, and I spend an inordinate, perhaps even excessive amount of my time deeply obsessing over the invisible, governing equations that strictly rule our lives and keep us perpetually running on heavy hamster wheels that are moving just slightly faster than we can ever hope to run. If you are someone who looks at your weekly paycheck and wonders where every cent of it actually goes, or if you feel like you are working harder in late 2025 than ever before in your life, but your savings account balance remains basically flat, make certain to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up right now, because today we are not going to talk about investing. We are talking about a massive, widespread accounting fraud. Not a fraud committed by a greedy corporation, but one you are unknowingly committing against your very own self every single time you blindly accept a job offer based solely on the deceptive gross salary. We are going to calculate your real hourly wage. And I absolutely have to warn you right now, once you finally see this true number, you will never, ever look at a simple price tag the same way again for as long as you live. Here is the fundamental, deep-seated lie that we are all systematically sold from the very moment we finally graduate from school. We are told repeatedly and convincingly that our entire value as a human being is strictly defined by our annual salary. If you happen to make exactly $65,000 a year, the standard math tells you that is roughly $31 every single hour. On the surface, that sounds incredibly decent. It feels respectable. In your mind, that amount is enough to live on, at least theoretically. But we have to look closer. In the professional business world, looking strictly at revenue without looking at expenses is exactly how large companies go bankrupt. If a local bakery successfully sells a full $1 million worth of bread, but they simultaneously spend $1,001 on flour and rent, that entire bakery is worth zero. Yet, when it comes to our own hard labor, we only look at the revenue, which is the salary. We completely and dangerously ignore the cost of goods sold. And the good being sold is you, your life, your precious energy. And the cost of selling yourself to an employer is astronomical. Let us now perform a truly brutal, uncompromising audit of a hypothetical average worker navigating this current economic landscape. For the sake of our forensic investigation, let us call this individual Kyle. Kyle earns that respectable and seemingly decent $31 for every single hour of his life that he sells to his employer. On paper, this appears to be a solid foundation for a successful and stable life. But before even a single cent of that hard-earned money actually hits his bank account, the government arrives to take its mandatory cut. Between the federal tax, the state tax, and the FICA deductions, that original $31 is instantly and ruthlessly shaved down. Your hourly take-home pay is suddenly reduced to approximately $24. This is the simple, easy math that we all know and have been conditioned to accept as part of the system. But now we must begin the real work and subtract the specific work-related costs. These are the mandatory expenses that Kyle pays solely for the absolute privilege of even having his job. First on the list is the inevitable commute. The average worker spends thousands of dollars every single year on gasoline, constant car maintenance, and expensive insurance premiums just to get to the physical building where they actually make their money. If Kyle drives 30 minutes each way, that represents significant wear and tear on a vehicle that he basically only owns for the sole purpose of getting to his place of employment. If he takes the train, he is forced to pay for the expensive monthly pass. Let us say, very conservatively, that these combined transportation costs drain exactly $4,000 from his pocket every single year. Then there is the unavoidable cost of physical appearance. Kyle cannot simply roll out of his warm bed and show up at the corporate office in his comfortable pajamas. He strictly needs a wardrobe of business casual clothes. He needs to pay for dry cleaning. He is required to look professional at all times. That is an ongoing, mandatory expense. Then we have the massive convenience tax. This is a significant one. Because Kyle is stuck at the office from 9 to 5, he ends up buying lunch twice a week, simply because he did not have the time or energy to meal prep on Sunday. He buys the $5 coffee because he desperately needs the jolt of caffeine to survive the tedious 2-pages meeting. He even has to pay for a dog walker because he is not home to let his pet out. These are specific costs that would absolutely not exist if he did not have the job. He is literally spending his own money just to work. And then we arrive at the darkest category of all: decompression spending. This is the hard-earned money Kyle spends specifically to numb the deep psychological pain of the job itself. It is the Friday night bar tab that grows as he tries to forget the week. It is the impulsive, expensive vacation he books suddenly because he feels a desperate need to get away. It is the recurring therapy bills and the frequent retail therapy. This is the money we are forced to spend just to heal the internal damage that the job inflicts upon our psyche. When you finally add up all of these monetary costs, the taxes, the car maintenance, the professional clothes, the expensive lunches, and the spending to escape the numbness, Kyle is not actually taking home $65,000. His net real income might actually be closer to $35,000. But we are only halfway through the true equation because a wage is a function of money divided by time. And just like we overestimate the money, we drastically underestimate the time involved. HR says Kyle works 40 hours a week, but that is a fundamental lie. Kyle wakes up at 6:30 a.m. to shower, shave, and iron his shirt. That is 30 minutes of pure labor performed exclusively for the employer. He then drives 30 minutes to work. This is unpaid labor. He takes a full hour for lunch, which is technically recorded as being off the clock, but the reality is that he simply cannot go home. He cannot take a refreshing nap in his own bed. He cannot spend that precious time playing with his young kids. In every practical sense, he is held captive by the office environment. Then, once the official workday finally ends, he drives for another 30 minutes just to get back home. This time spent in transit is yet another block of his life, dedicated to the requirements of the company, yet it remains completely uncompensated. When he finally arrives home, he spends 30 minutes just decompressing, staring blankly at the wall, or venting to his partner about the frustrations caused by his boss. He finds himself checking work emails on his phone while he should be relaxing. All of this is shadow work. It is time that belongs entirely to the job, but the job never pays for it. If you actually sit down and add up the grooming, the commuting, the decompressing, and the constant mental toll of worrying, Kyle is not actually working 40 hours a week. He is realistically dedicating 55 or even 60 hours a week to his employment. So now, let us perform the real math and find the real hourly wage calculation. We take that whittled down net income of $35,000 and we divide it by the inflated true hours of nearly 3,000 hours per year. When you punch that into a calculator, that $31 an hour simply evaporates. Suddenly, after all the hidden costs are subtracted, Kyle is making $11 an hour, or $8, or in some high-stress, high-cost-of-living scenarios, he is mathematically making less than the teenager flipping burgers down the street. This is because the teenager simply walks to work, wears a provided uniform, and leaves every ounce of his stress at the fry station when he clocks out. This is the ultimate work scam. You have been carefully tricked into adopting a high-churn, low-margin business model where you are the actual product, and you are unknowingly selling yourself to your employer at a significant financial loss. And look, I truly know that this all sounds incredibly depressing. You might be sitting there thinking, "Great, Kyle, I am broke, and my job sucks. Thanks for the miserable update." But the core reason we do this difficult math is not to make you feel depressed. It is to make you angry and, much more importantly, to make you incredibly efficient. The moment you finally know your real hourly wage, your entire perspective on consumerism changes completely. This is a powerful concept popularized by the famous book Your Money or Your Life, and it serves as the ultimate antidote to being broke and miserable. Let us say you calculate your real hourly wage, and it turns out to be exactly $10 an hour. Now, you walk into a store and see a new pair of shoes for $100. The price tag says $100. But your brain needs to translate that immediately. That isn't $100. That is 10 irreplaceable hours of your life. That is 10 long hours of sitting in stagnant traffic, dealing with passive-aggressive emails, and missing out on precious time with your family. Is that single pair of shoes really worth 10 hours of that kind of suffering? Suddenly, the answer is almost always a resounding no. This math finally exposes the dangerous trap of the golden handcuffs. We often accept promotions that offer more money but come with exponentially higher hidden costs. Let us say you get promoted to manager, they offer you a $10,000 raise. That sounds absolutely awesome, right? Now, you have to work late every single night. Because you are working so late, you are forced to order takeout every night. You have to buy much nicer, more expensive suits. You even need a second car, because you can no longer carpool with your colleagues. Your stress levels skyrocket, so you book a much more expensive vacation just to survive the pressure. You might actually find that your real hourly wage goes down after a promotion. You are processing more money through your bank account, but you are keeping less of it while giving up more of your life to get it. There is also a deeply hidden, terrifying opportunity cost here that most people completely fail to see. When you constantly spend your money on the unavoidable costs of working, like the daily commute and expensive convenience food, you are not just spending cash, you are actively robbing your future self of the incredible power of compound interest. Think about that $5 cup of coffee you buy every single day because you are simply too exhausted to brew it at home. If you took that same money and invested it at a 7% return over 30 years, it would grow to nearly $200,000. You aren't just drinking a caffeinated beverage. In a very real mathematical sense, you are literally drinking your retirement. You are slowly sipping away your future freedom, one convenience at a time. The entire economic system relies on you being far too exhausted to ever actually do this math. They depend on you remaining a passive, tired consumer of your own life, rather than an active architect of your wealth. They want you to think, "I make good money," so that you keep signing the expensive lease on the luxury apartment and financing that flashy car. This keeps you trapped in a vicious cycle of needing the high-paying job just to pay for the expensive things you bought, specifically to tolerate the stress of having the job in the first place. So what exactly is the ultimate solution here? How do we finally break this crushing, deceptive equation? The answer is not necessarily to quit your job tomorrow morning and go live in a cabin in the woods. We have to be realistic about our lives. We all have bills that must be paid. The real solution is to ruthlessly and systematically optimize your real hourly wage. This specific number must become the brand new metric for your personal success. It is no longer about your total gross income. It is entirely about your true efficiency. Can you negotiate working from home just 2 days a week if it saves you 2 hours of exhausting commuting and $10 in daily gas costs? If so, you just gave yourself a massive financial raise without the company ever having to pay you a single dime more. Can you start meal prepping every Sunday? By doing this, you drastically lower your cost of goods sold, the expense of maintaining yourself as a worker. Every bit of planning reduces the financial leak from your paycheck. Can you move closer to your place of work? Can you finally stop caring so much about what your coworkers think of your clothing choices? You must realize that every single dollar of work expense you manage to cut is exactly $1 of pure, unadulterated freedom. But the single biggest shift you must make is entirely psychological. You have to start treating your personal labor exactly like a professional business. A smart, successful business owner does not just try to blindly increase their total revenue. They focus intensely on trying to increase their profit margin. Your very life is the business. Your margin is the precious time and money you have left over at the end of the day to actually be a human being. If you are making $100,000 a year, but you are spending $95,000 and 80 long hours a week just to generate it, you are a failing business. You are Enron. You are just waiting to collapse. But if you make $50,000 a year, spend only $20,000, and work 30 hours a week, you are a highly profitable, robust enterprise. You are winning. This is exactly where the negative epiphany turns into positive action. I want you to sit down this weekend, not when you are exhausted on Friday, but when you are fresh on Sunday, and run the numbers. Calculate your commute cost. Estimate your taxes. Be honest about your decompression spending. Take that whittled down net income and divide it by your total hours committed to the job. This is the moment of truth. Write that specific number on a sticky note and place it directly on your credit card. For many of you, the reality will be startling. My real wage is only $8.50 per hour. The next time you go to buy something trivial or unnecessary, look closely at that number. Ask yourself the hard question: am I truly willing to trade 4 full hours of my finite life for this piece of plastic junk? That specific friction will save you more money than any budget application ever could. We are living in an era where time is rapidly becoming the ultimate, most precious currency. The wealthy are actively using their money to buy back their time. Meanwhile, the poor are unknowingly selling their time at a massive, tragic discount. Please, do not continue to sell your precious time at a discount. You must perform a deep, uncompromising audit of your entire life. You need to investigate every single habit and every recurring expense that has become a mindless part of your daily routine. Ruthlessly cut every single vampire cost associated with your job. These are the small, blood-sucking expenses that drain your financial life force without you even noticing they are there. Start building a significant intentional gap between your total income and your total expenses. You must protect this space at all costs, because that specific gap is exactly where your true freedom lives. If this video has successfully made you rethink your weekly paycheck, please share it directly with a coworker who looks visibly tired or overworked. We are all currently stuck in this same economic trap. But remember, we can absolutely math our way out of this together. Thank you so incredibly much for watching, and I will definitely see you in the very next one.